Sometimes to restore, we need to escape the rapid pace of the city. One of the best places in the world to do this is the Karoo, home to such treasures as the Swartberg House, inspired by the mountains that overlook it. It's here that we meet botanical artist and designer Sally Arnold, who shares with us the story of the home.
The Karoo is essential to the way I see things. The way I look at stuff, it's about clarity, it's about power, it's not ambiguous. It's about extraordinary vision, about being able to see far and wide. I'm Sally Arnold, I'm a botanical artist and designer. Welcome to the Swartberg House, come inside. This house was designed by the wonderful architect from South Africa and now practicing in London, Jennifer Beningfield. She has been visiting the Karoo for a long time and is a close friend of mine. She's currently working on a huge project in London. They live in a small apartment. It's a hectic lifestyle. She has a very busy schedule, both she and her husband, David, and they have a young daughter, Iris. And so for them to come here to the Karoo and to expand a little bit has been one of their lifelong dreams. They adore the light, they adore the lack of stress, and the fact that the house is relatively bare of any adornment is a conscious design on their part. They do not want to be distracted by things that will divert their attention from just being here and relaxing and just chilling.
The mastermind behind the house is architect Jen Beningfield, who is currently working in London.
My name is Jennifer Beningfield. I'm the designer and owner of the Swartberg House in the Karoo. I created the Swartberg House because I was interested in making something that was very particular to that particular place. A friend of mine asked me if it was my dream house, and I said, well, there's not an abstract dream house. There's only a house that exists that is right for a particular place and context.
She calls this house an agrarian building. It's embedded in this loose landscape of thorn trees, but the house itself rises up as a kind of Karoo minimalist, peaceful, block-shaped farmhouse. Karoo vernacular architecture actually is based on cubes. Those were the braktakis. And this is not a braktak house, but it is referencing a lot of this very cubist architecture in the Karoo. I know that Jennifer very much loved the height in the house that I currently live in, which has a point which is at 8 meters, and she wanted some height in her house, but she kind of really went a step further and just kept the height constant throughout the whole house. For her, it's about the power of the volumes, the power of light coming into the volumes, how they work throughout the day. It had to be a really big, strong statement to sit comfortably in this landscape. The Karoo is huge. It's vast. What's the point of putting a tiny little pile of bricks somewhere if you can actually articulate the space in such a way that you can really talk to it and also surround it with a certain style of vegetation? When I was a little kid, growing up on a sheep farm in the Karoo, we had the sky and my mum's garden and this expanse. And so the flowers and stuff going on in the garden were like our TV. So from a very small age and a very small height, I was like zoning in on this stuff that was happening, watching the bees and the insects. It was fascinating. Eventually, I was in Rome, setting up my first studio, and I bought some canvases and I decided to paint. The nostalgia for the Karoo drove me to look for plant forms. This is a drawing of a tiny, you could say it's a flower, but actually every single one of these is a little flower. The whole thing is called a matchstick bromeliad. and they grow in my garden. The most fascinating thing about them is this color besides the shape. I just can't get enough of them. So I decided to do a really big blow up. You can see just how blue those little tips are and these quite dark, shocking pink sheaths, which you could call towards the flower, which then allow that little blue thing to open up and bees to come in and have their honey fix for the day. Working with Jennifer is a really exciting project because she has these huge visions, and for her house she wanted specific cushions. We discussed the design, which was called arc in the one case, and the other one was called T. Pretty much geometric mathematical symbols, really. These cushions come from a set of paintings of mine, which was called the Cardinals. They consist of 14 paintings, which are about the cardinal points. She wanted very specific colors because the house is a white monochrome foil for everything. And this is, in fact, the only color in the house. So the cushions are a beautiful blue, which comes from the Karoo. There's some yellow, a lot of gray. Architects are into gray. These cushions are made of, or hand-woven, I should say, of fine adult mohair. Fine adult mohair is different from kid mohair in that it's thicker, slightly coarser, but because this is premium quality, it's not scratchy. And the robustness of this particular adult mohair is that it's really strong for a floor cushion. And it's lovely to lie on the floor, to be cozy near the fire, and just relax.
Now, as a builder, it was quite a nice project to work on. Certainly, it was different than what we used to do in Prince Albert. There was talk about it, and it doesn't fit into Prince Albert, and it's too big, and it's not the Karoo style. And then something else happens, and it's old news now. So now everyone's kind of used to it. The house was built energy efficient, not using any air cons or heating. It's got double glazing, it's got insulation in the walls and insulation underfloor. All the doors and windows were custom made. How it works is you'll open these little windows to let in air during the early evening, and then during the hot time of the day you close up everything to retain the temperature.
Swartberg House does something very interesting with the environment that it's in, is that it's a very hot and then very cold climate. It's extreme. But rather than relying on artificial means to modulate that temperature, the house itself does it. And by doing that, people have to understand a more direct relationship with the natural world. And I think that's a really important thing, that we have an awareness of what we do when we build, how we disrupt nature, but also how we can use buildings to reconnect to an awareness of the natural environment.
This is what I would call a child's dream room, with these wonderful high ceilings, lots of space to dream, to imagine the sky above you at night. This is not what you'd call a conventional children's bedroom. It is sparse, but with lots of beautiful books on the bookshelves and space for many, many more. And I think when you're in a tent-like experience here, your fantasy can run wild. So personally, I would love this as a child's bedroom.
The stone walls around the pool are fundamentally there to give an idea of those old sheep pens in the Karoo that were made out of dry stacked stone, but also a connection to the mountain. The reason I wanted a black rock is because it's the Swartberg House, it's the Black Mountain House, and I wanted the enclosure around the pool to connect to the color of the mountains. And we were so lucky to find Johan, because he is passionate about stones and materials.
The time in the mountain is, it's like your office. It becomes part of you. You ride past a certain rock all the time and you remember it. One day when you get that job, you remember that rock and you know what's in the area. I'm Johan Meiburg, I stay in Prince Albert. I can call myself a stonemason. There's quite a few Johans in town. Johan Plank, Johan Boom, and he doesn't smoke boom. He chopped the trees off, and I'm Johan Klip. And the other day, I got interested in fish, and I was thinking, how about starting a fish business? So I can already see me becoming Johan Klipvis. And but it's fun. Living here is so different than town. There's so much different shapes and sizes and types of rock. Sometimes a rock will have these coloring, and you can see this is a piece that broke off. There's the lines where it broke off. And this is actually the soil that was orangey red, and the soil got in between the cracks and gave it that coloring. The more you can have a rock shaped for a hole instead of adding little ones into gaps, it's better to chip and chisel till that thing fits fairly nice. This is an easy build because it's fairly square, but the other rocks will make your mind tick quite a bit and you go slow. You do about 3 square meters a day. When we started off, we weren't good at all. We didn't know how to do it. But as you go on, you learn new tricks. Soon you realize that you're doing it just like all the other guys are doing. I initially didn't understand exactly what she wanted. She wanted black rock. I remembered a rock on a hill just outside of town that has a black stripe in it. And it looks like, you would say in Afrikaans, like a vetkoek. It looks like it just came out of the oil. As we went round the mountain, picking up this rock, the black rim started disappearing. And we ended up with this, and it still worked out, because she wanted a dark black rock to go with her paving, which is this black brick. It was a very challenging rock because you don't balance round things on top of round. If you take marbles, you don't really balance them easily on top of each other. And this is a similar situation where you have to really have the cement embrace the rock. I tell you what, before it was overgrown and everything was fitted, all the windows and all the shutters, we thought, wow, this is art. Like, this is the art oak. It came from overseas with these ideas. And once it was finished and rounded off, we could see it just flows. It's a fantastic design. I'm excited to be part of this project.
We're standing in the kitchen dining area now, which is a lovely, generous space with a big, generous table. Jennifer comes from a big family, and she really, really loves to have them all around and sit down and just celebrate this wonderful space. Why it is so wonderfully pristine is because everything is hidden, everything is concealed. Just less is more, less de-stresses you. It's just keeping things calm, very simple, and so everything disappears into these cupboards. There are also cupboards here where Iris, the young daughter's drawing equipment, would be found, and it's at her height, so she can reach all of this. It really is a generous and welcoming space. What I'm standing in front of here is not an opening, it is actually a window. One could walk through this window if this beautiful chaise longue were not here. The windows are very specifically positioned to create the best view. So every window has been maximized and optimized in its location, in its orientation. In fact, the whole building has a very slight hinge. If you look at it from above, you'll see in the plan, to get an even better view from the window. So this is the delicateness and the subtlety of Jennifer's design work. The other aspect of these wonderful big windows is to bring the outside in. Literally today with a bit of wind, we've had beautiful bougainvillea petals blowing in. Color is brought in from outside and infuses the house with its textures and sometimes its fragrances.
Retired botanist Sue Dean was called in to create the landscaping. Her expert skills have helped bring to life a garden of indigenous delights.
The landscaping of the house is a very interesting problem because it's in the Karoo. It's very dry. There's not a lot of water. And I wanted to create something that was very specific to the Karoo. Sue was incredibly supportive and helpful in identifying species that would work very well in that context.
I'm Sue Dean. I'm a retired botanist, but right now we've been running an Indigenous nursery here in Prince Albert. Being a botanist, I like Indigenous plants, and I noticed that very few people in the village were growing Indigenous plants. By establishing this Indigenous nursery, we've seen the whole face of gardens in this village change, and if you drive around the village, you'll see many, many plants you've seen in no other villages. Many Karoo plants have very small leaves, rather grey in colour, and they're very tolerant of drought. For example, this one that we call the langyan. This is the tongblaar vygie. They are found only in Prince Albert. That's their world distribution. And you can see they have extraordinarily watery and plump leaves, so they can hang on to their water for maybe a year without any rainfall. This is Speck Worm. It grows on the hills all around Prince Albert on north-facing slopes. The leaves are round and very juicy, full of water, and the plant can survive for very, very many months without any rainfall at all. Speck Worm, for many, many decades, has been a popular hedge plant in Prince Albert, and then it went out of fashion. And then with the research on how it holds onto carbon, because it doesn't lose its leaves and it has a vast underground root system which stores carbon for many years and it doesn't burn, people started saying, well, we should plant Speck Worm to sequestrate carbon. It can be grown in gardens, but not in the natural veld in Fynbos. It doesn't belong there. One of the things we'd like to do is to awaken people to the huge variety of plants that are available in South Africa in our natural vegetation for planting, and to discourage them to plant invasive plants from Australia and the Americas. Plant indigenous to your area. Jennifer wants very simple, plain structural effects. She wants very few plant species. She wants simple patterns. So that's why we chose to work with one ground cover under the trees here and with another ground cover in the more open areas in the sun. Both of them form very dense green water-like patches that give this very hot, dry, dusty area a cool, refreshing, soothing feeling.
There is that idea with the landscape that it's splashes of plant, almost like a very organic, flowing painting when you look down on it, and when you walk through it, it becomes something completely different.
This project was very challenging for us. We had never done a similar project before. We'd never been asked to establish such large areas of a single plant, nor develop such flowing informal gardens. So it was exciting. Our staff enjoyed working here, and I feel it's been a success.
At the end of the day, this is what it's all about. This absolutely extraordinary landscape, the vastness, the stillness, the calmness, these beautiful mountains, which is the second highest mountain range in South Africa, the Swartberg. Jennifer embedded her house in this sense of peace and calmness to create a safe space for her family, created with this blend of old and new that is so beautiful, letting it all in from outside. It is a sanctuary, an architectural sanctuary.
Buildings have souls and characters that are specific to them and to the place that they're in. And all of the people who've touched that house, all of the people who've made it, who've thought about it, they all contribute to the soul and character of a building. And I think that is the best of architecture, the best of humanity, is that we can come together, we can make something that no individual could ever do. And if there's a success of the Swartberg House, it is that it is independent of me. It has its own life, it has its own character, and it will have its own future.